128 shows since last June 22nd. It is great to be here, and we have interview week during the 9 days between the 1st of Av and Tisha B'Av. It is interview week, Monday night, Wednesday night, Thursday night, and in studio tonight we have the legendary trumpet player of Shlock Rock, but he's not only the trumpet player of Shlock Rock, he is the trumpet player of a lot of Jewish music bands, or at least one specific Jewish music band. He'll tell us all about his career. We welcome into the studio, into the Four Corners Project studio here in Beit Shemesh, Israel, Jordan Hirsch. Welcome, Jordan.
Thank you. Thank you. It's so nice to be here. What a
All
pleasure.
right, it's
128 shows. I could have been here a little earlier. I don't want to talk about it. You had to get the waiters from Leonard's on the show first before you could have. You have to get the waiter from the Young Israel Kew Garden Hills to come.
No, I don't know. I don't know if Shlomi Ash would like to be called a waiter. I don't know.
I was in Shlock Rock before Shlomi Ash could spell Shlock Rock.
So that was very funny. That was very funny. Your brother was on before you, but
I know. By the way, my brother wouldn't have been in Shlock Rock if it wasn't for me.
That's right. You, as a matter of fact, I found this out through the interview, because you introduced us to Dave. Dave introduced us to Roy.
Right.
Roy is the drummer that played the most shows with Shlock Rock out of any other drummer.
That's amazing.
So it's all because of you.
Well, the truth is, I actually, that's not something I really, really enjoy, is making musical shidduchim, making musical matches. And I remember you came to me when Mark was moving out Midwest, and you said, I could use another bass. I need a bass player because my bass player's moving. And I said, what? And I'll tell you, so here's the interesting part about that. That was at a time, one of the reasons why I thought of it is because my brother, I don't know, I guess he had moved back to New York fairly shortly before that. He had started becoming interested in Judaism and in other, observances, and he wanted to play again. He had been doing like a day job. He had been doing like an office job, and I remember he wanted to play, and he was saying, I don't know. I said, and then you mentioned it to me. I said, what a perfect thing, because he, growing up in the house, I was the younger brother, and it was a big deal for me, as a kid, that my brother, my cool older brother, would have always had like rock band rehearsals in the basement in our house in Muncie. And I always thought that's such a cool thing that he was like, he's a real, dedicated rock and roll bassist and knew a ton of repertoire, which, let's face it, for Shlock Rock, you really have to know a lot of songs, because I know that you go very far afield,
right?
All different styles, and you are yourself, as someone who loves rock, what's something I really admire about you, have like this kind of encyclopedic knowledge, I don't want to say you and Steve Van Zandt in the same breath, but it's a similar approach.
I'm not as good as guys like the Kraz, Alan Kraz, and those rock and roll. J.J. Greenberg, Oliver Shalom, knew rock and roll. I really was a pop guy more than we all, you grew up in Queens. I understand. That's what it was. But also, I started off with Jewish music. I started off as I was talking to Avrami. Avrami was my last interview.
Avrami.
Well, okay, we're not talking about this. We're not talking about. It's really all about dates. Okay, but Avrami also grew up with Jewish music. We grew up with Jewish music first, and then afterwards, did I get into the Beatles and?
Were you a performer of Jewish music as a kid?
Yes, I was.
Because Avrami was in like New York School of Jewish Song. He actually
I wasn't in any official capacity as an accordion player. I
remember you as an accordion player.
I played every Jewish song, that I learned, that it was a natural fit. And that's very, very funny, because the first question that I wanted to ask you was, when I started off in the business, the first thing people asked me was, do you make a living from this? We're one of a few souls that make a living doing music, but specifically Jewish music. I mean, we, even though you might do other things as well, Jewish music was really, and people would always say to me, so you make a living from this? So did they ask you that question?
No. I mean, yeah. Sam Claver always used to have a very funny, you remember Shmoo Claver, of course.
Of course.
from Ruach, and we'll probably mention his name again. But Shmuel Kliber always had this funny thing because when people would come up to him at weddings, and what a great drummer, he was a great drummer.
Oh,
Um, and
unbelievable.
he's had some health challenges lately for mobility and stuff. But I just did a family wedding for him, and he was just as witty and as sharp and as an amazing guy as he has ever been. But so people would see Shmuel on a wedding, and they would say, so well, I get it, you play drums, but what do you do during the day? And he would
Right.
say, I would say, I'm a shepherd, or I'm a
Yes.
gladiator. He would say I'm a gladiator. So
Yes.
I, I I don't think I make a living from Jewish music. I don't think I have in a while, but I make a living from music. And now that means teaching because for many years I taught in a small private school on the Upper West Side. And so that was it was probably about 50-50 in favor, 50-50. Well, 50-50 is not in favor of anything. So about 50-50 teaching and playing. I also, the business of Jewish music is a way that I made money, meaning you deal with clients and booking bands and whatnot, and that's also
Right.
a nice way to make some money.
Right.
And then the Jewish music. I mean, what do you call Jewish music? For instance, for a year and a half, I played for the National Yiddish Theater Folksbiene when they did the Yiddish revival of Fiddler on the Roof.
Right.
So
We were gonna. That's part of my the questions
right.
that, of course, I'm going to ask you about.
So that Jewish music? Is that commercial theater music? To me, it's all music,
Right.
and it's all
That's
about
true.
making people happy. So if I'm making someone happy because I'm playing at a concert, or if I'm making someone happy because I'm playing, klezmer music, if I'm making someone happy because I'm playing in a rock and roll band in a bar, it's making people happy, and I get to do it with my trumpet. We're all good.
Yes, it's a great thing. By the way, we have to say hello to Judy Hertzfeld, our associate producer from Clifton, New Jersey.
You're
She
loyal.
always
You're the most
she always
loyal.
gives us the thumbs up if the sound is working well. We
Well,
have
that's
to,
good.
there are times, but because this is our 128th show, I actually had one show where I did the entire show. I had put the keyboard jack into
I remember
insert.
this. I remember you
And
talked about
the
it
only
afterwards.
thing you heard was my voice, which is funny because my Thursday show was all a cappella. This past Thursday night, it was all a cappella, but there was no keyboard in the show. But this time I'm playing keyboard, and all you hear is my voice. And so now what we do is we have Judy always give us a thumbs up if
So
everything
we
is
have no
going
idea
well.
if anybody's watching this thing, right?
Yeah, well, we have some numbers, but the truth is we average around 1,000 people a show. By the time because it stays up, it goes. But and this is a good time. You're segueing me into my paperwork. For those of you watching from Facebook, we have 4 channels on Facebook that it goes to: the Lenny Solomon English page, the Lenny Solomon Hebrew page, the Shlock Rock page, and the Four Corners Project page. And then we have 2 YouTube channels: Shlock Rock and the Four Corners Project. We have a Twitter account at Lenny Solomon, and we have LinkedIn. A link on Ethan Bill is watching. Ethan Bill just checked in.
Hey,
All right. So the thing is that we go to 8 different outlets. Now, while we're doing this live, we might only have 10 to 12 or 15 or 20 listeners, but by the time the show is out there around a week, it's close to 1,000 viewers,
that's amazing.
which is really unbelievable because when I started this on June 22nd a year ago, and the reason I started is because there was no work. There's no concerts happening.
I started on June 22nd because that was the anniversary of the beginning of Hitler's invasion of Russia, which of course led to his downfall.
I did not know that.
I know these things. Operation Barbarossa.
You're a real historian.
I'm a real nerd, maybe.
Okay, so listen, let's go. First thing is tell our listeners how you picked trumpet.
Really an unremarkable story.
Okay.
I grew up in. I hate to say, people actually ask me that. Oh, did you fall in love with the sound? Did you listen to a Louis Armstrong record when you were a kid? And my parents had all sorts of great records. But no, what actually happened was I was in a public school in Muncie, New York. Yes, there were times when there were public school students in Muncie, New York, and there was a school around the corner from my house. So I went to school,
Right.
and I did my brother, and my sister, my other younger brother. If you passed a test, you could get a free instrument. They've had instruments in the school, so if you pass like a little musical aptitude test, you get a free instrument. So I passed the test and I got a free instrument, but I was in 3rd grade. So in 3rd grade, they would only give you a violin because they wanted to make sure they had enough string players, and because it's hard to start larger instruments, brass instruments. You can't hold it up. So I played the violin for a year and I hated it. So, which may have been related to the fact that I didn't practice, so I never really get my chance to get good at it. So don't listen to me, kids. Practice.
I know, but violin is the hardest instrument to learn.
Actually, people always ask me, when people come to me and say, "What about their own kids? What instrument? What's instrument is easy to start with?" And I say, all instruments are hard and all instruments are easy. The question is not whether they're hard or easy. The question is, at which point in the relationship is it hard? So violin, you get a sound right away, but getting good at violin is hard. Trumpet, you might be hard to get a sound. Once you can get the sound, that's great. But then you have the challenges come at maybe different stages. In any event, I passed the test. I got the violin. I didn't like it. At the end of the year, I said I want to play a different instrument, and the teacher said, "Okay, at the beginning of next year, you'll come back to me and you'll choose an instrument." So I came back to him at the beginning of next year, and I said, "Well, I want my free instrument." And he said, "Mr. Wise, by the way, Murray Wise, a great music educator. He's in his 80s. He's still with us, living down in Florida. A wonderful, Hamish, beautiful guy. Taught me and my brother, and so shout out to Murray Wise. I hope you're enjoying retirement, which has been going." And so he said, "Well, yeah, you can have any instrument you want as long as it's trumpet, because that's all I have left." So
that's what you play. That's what you picked.
Yeah. So,
but you're a great trumpet player. You've become a fantastic trumpet player.
Well, that's very kind of you to say that. I mean, it's a constant.
You really had to
constant struggle.
Yes, you worked and worked and worked. I mean, you really, you are the workaholic with that instrument.
Well, the trumpet is a very unforgiving partner. It's a very unforgiving partner. It's physically demanding. It doesn't require strength. What it requires is a kind of subtle strength. Playing trumpet is closer to hitting a baseball than it is to pitching. Pitching, you have to have strength and you have to have technique. So trumpet's more like you have to have the swing, but the truth is what you really have to have is a good eye, and you have to have just that precise moment of contact. And that's really what it is.
Wow.
So that, well, maybe that's a bit wrong. Maybe it's the other way around. I don't know. It doesn't matter.
Well, I got to tell you,
the point is that it's really about fine motor skill and small muscle groups. So you have to you're constantly refining, constantly looking for efficiencies, and that's actually the real interesting. I mean, I just took some lessons with a wonderful teacher 2 years ago, and he upended my whole concept of how to breathe. And the truth is, as I get older, I'm in my late 50s, looking for those conceptual shifts is how you figure out how best.
So what you're actually saying is what pitchers, when they start off, they throw fastballs, right? Pitchers throw fastballs. And then when they get older, they have to learn how to pitch. They lose a couple of miles an hour on their fastball. All of a sudden, they're very hittable. So what they have to do is they have to learn a curve, and they have to be able to place that curve in the precise location.
Right, but if we're going for the analogies, it's not a question of that so much. It's not just, although that's also true, but it's about efficiency. It's about being able to throw a 95-mile-an-hour fastball, but to do it with less strain on your body. That's the trick. So that's the idea. You got a guy who's all muscle, like what's his face? He pitched for the Yankees. He would throw 100 miles an hour and he would throw the straight ball. Remember? He was a reliever.
Yeah, they're killing him now. Our oldest Chapman, they're killing him.
Not our oldest Chapman. Chapman has other problems. He's a head case.
But he's got throws 105 miles an hour. They hit him out of the park. It's unbelievable.
Well,
anyway, let's get away from
pitcher will catch up to any major league pitcher.
Let's go. But
that's why it's a constant struggle, because you're constantly looking for efficiencies.
Now, my earliest memory with you, and there must be earlier memories, but my earliest, and you know where I'm going. It's San Juan. Mm-hmm. Me and you, Avi Meza, Avi Feinberg, Shlomo Horowitz.
Good catch.
In San Juan.
Great guy. Who?
In San Juan, the five of us, and we went to play this wedding. I wasn't
supposed to be there.
What?
I wasn't supposed to be there. Those are the. I hope
I didn't know that.
I hope the TSA is not listening. This is about 1983 or 82.
Yeah,
it's supposed to be Charles. You didn't even know me.
I didn't, but it wasn't my gig. It was Avi Meza's gig.
Right. So Avi Meza, Really? Mesa wasn't hiring me then, whatever. So Mesa hired Charlie Abrams.
Right. I remember that.
And again, if you're
And he
listening,
couldn't do it for whatever reason. He either
I
got
had
sick.
I had to go to the gate and say, I'm Charlie Abrams. And they said, okay, get on the
That's
plane.
what we all did back in the day. Do you know back in the day, whenever I flew,
We could get away with anything.
yes, that's the. And ladies and gentlemen, you have no idea. 1984, I'm supposed to do a gig. I'm supposed to do a gig in Elizabeth, but I'm stuck in Chicago. And we get to the airport 20 minutes before the flight. I take $20. I slap it into a SkyCab's hand. He takes my 70-pound keyboard, rolls it right on the plane through no security. It's
security.
1984.
The
No
worst
security.
If you were flying People's Express, you had to get there on time because it was like boarding a bus. Once they ran out of seats, they ran out of seats. I got into trouble once with Nagina because I was at the Homo Act on a Saturday night and I stayed up late. I maybe was talking to somebody from Queens. And I drove back to Muncie at 3:00 in the morning, slept on my couch in my parents' living room. I get to the airport 20 minutes before departure, so I'm on time. And they said, yeah, take him on the plane. So Shelley Lang who's a lovely guy, and I know him for many years.
And he still is.
So mad at me because I missed the flight. I said, Shelley, I didn't miss the flight. I got there on time. He goes, you missed the flight because you didn't get on the flight you were supposed to. And I said, well, I'm sorry. And I got on the next flight. I got to Rochester. But listen, some of the guests at the wedding also missed the flight. It was a gig up in Rochester, and I remember that gig very well because Danny Rubenstein, the great saxophone player who we just lost this past year. He was a wonderful guy, wonderful player. Danny Rubenstein I sat down with him when they fed the band, and I sat down with him at the table, and he said, "Okay, kid, watch me." And he goes to the bartender, and he goes, "Let me have a scotch," and he gives him like a $20 bill as a tip. I'm like, what are you doing? He says, watch what happens. And then all night long, the bartender and the waiter were bringing him food and drinks and everything. He says, that's how you go out of town.
Really?
Says,
that is a great.
A little money, it'll take care of you the rest of the way.
That's an unbelievable story.
Right.
It's really unbelievable. I mean, we have a lot of Rochester stories. We all went to Rochester.
Yes, well, that was more recent. We don't have to get into that right now, but we can get into it. Unfortunately,
but the San Juan wedding. Let's just talk for 2 minutes.
Yes.
Mayor Kahana is Masadar Kedushin.
Right.
And
you, the Mayor Kahana fan in the world,
and you are not the Mayor Kahana fan in the world. And you had it. You confronted him with his.
It wasn't. I don't want to say it was a confrontation. He said something, and I questioned what he said.
Yeah.
But why? The interesting thing is why. It's because here's the interesting part of that story that I think you're not remembering, or maybe you're not mentioning. The bride and groom were the only religious people in their family.
Of course, yes.
So there was they didn't have a minion they didn't have any people who knew to go to the chassanstish, the groom's reception. So they asked us, will you guys, you're from guy, will you go and sit at the chassanstish? So we all went to the chassanstish. And Mayor Kahana said something, and I said, well, I don't know if that's really true, that it was about coercion in the Torah. I remember he goes, well, of course there's coercion in the Torah. You can do this. I said, yeah, but we can't actually go to somebody and make them do something they don't want to do. It was a very interesting discussion. I'll just say that I was young
but I remember you. But here's the story. So let's just tell the audience. We go to do this wedding, the 5 of us. We are the only, there are 2 religious people. There's the bride and the groom, and then there's the band, and then there's Mayor Kahana, and then there's a 5-piece Latin combo.
There were 3 bands.
There were 3 bands?
There was a cocktail hour band, too. Very elegant. I remember them wearing white
I missed that. I missed that totally.
I'm like, Lenny, what are we doing here? You go, just
we're eating airline food. Yeah. We're eating airline food. They don't want to dance to us. The only people that danced there were very few people dancing to us.
Right, the cousin and Kyle and a few people in the family.
But when the Latin band came on, they went berserk.
It was unbelievable. It was a great Latin band. It was Puerto Rico. It was San Juan. People knew what they were doing. Yeah, but I remember the cocktail hour looked like something out of a Fred Astaire movie. It was on the balcony of the hotel, overlooking the ocean. It was gorgeous. This Latin band, everyone's good looking, dressed in white tuxedo jackets.
Yes,
the whole thing very elegant. And then
and you remember that we're holding
5 sloppy guys in New York,
and we're holding chuppah poles because there was nobody to hold the chuppah pole.
I remember.
I remember I was one of the people holding a chuppah pole, and
That's
I mean,
amazing.
that was just an insane experience,
It was,
especially it was not, let's say it was 1983, which
and we didn't
it
know
might
what
have,
we were. And let's face it, we didn't really know what we were doing.
no, we didn't know what we were doing. And I'm 22 years old. And because
Right.
now I'm 60. So I'm 22 years old. It's 1983. I'm
Right.
holding a chuppah pole at a wedding that Mayor Kahana is officiating. And the only thing I know about Mayor Kahana is my mother is saying, stay away from him. He's a radical. Stay away. Don't get too close to him. You know, because my mother can't, my mother was it's not that she was against him.
She just doesn't like tumult.
She's just saying, stay in the middle, stay center.
Right. It's so funny. It's actually interesting because I'm not a big fan of Meir Kahana, but I have to tell you, my father, Oliver Shalom, I wouldn't call him a fan of Meir Kahana's radicalism, but he had a different way of looking at it, which he told me later, like a little, B'derech Musar. He said, when I was a teacher in the New York City public school system, and I got targeted because I was Jewish, and this was at a time when there was a lot of unrest in the public school system in the late 60s, early 70s. And he said, I went to the ACLU for protection because I was being pushed out because I was Jewish. And the ACLU said they really couldn't do anything about it because you have to have something actionable that you can take to court. And he said, when I called the JDL, he said, they said, we're going to come and keep an eye on you, make sure that nothing happens to you. So he says, no, he says, I'm not in favor of violence or radicalism. He says, but I give a lot of credit to a guy who says, I'm going to stick up for you. So I always, I critique Meir Kahana on policy and on concepts and on certain things.
But he was he loved Jews. He loved Judaism. He loved.
Well,
Jews.
He was a more complicated guy than that. Yossi Klein Halevi wrote a very good book about that experience.
But anyway, it's unbelievable. Do you realize that we've been going for 21 minutes and we haven't even gotten into Shlock Rock yet? We haven't even gotten into you in Jersey NCSY with Mark Infield, Jonathan Rimberg, Shmuel Wasserman on drums, right?
That's actually the second version of the band, right? Jonathan Rimberg and I started playing NCSY Shop. Mark was the veteran musician. The Chazan of Shlock, he was already more experienced than us. When I remember my first NCSY Shabbaton where there was a band. Well, my first NCSY Shabbaton where there was a band was Muncie in 1975, and I'll tell you who the band was. It was Shema Kolenu.
I remember Shema Kolenu.
So they were actually doing a Shabbaton in the United States. It was Zale Newman, and I don't think Matti Kornfeld was there. I think he was in Israel already by then, but he would do the recordings. But it was Zale Newman, and I don't know who else was in the band, but I remember meeting Zale Newman. That was my very first NCSY Shabbaton. My second NCSY Shabbaton was Winter Regional of that year, also in Muncie. And I think Mark Infield, as a ninth grader, might have been playing in the band.
Wow.
Right, he was a kid. He was from Fairlawn. He was from Fairlawn. I think his family may have been originally from Patterson also, but I don't really know. I never asked him about that. That's funny. Actually, I owe him a phone call. Mark was already more experienced than us because his father, Oliver Shalom, a lovely guy. Remember Mark's dad, right?
Yes.
His father was very supportive of him playing music, and he got him drum lessons with a well-known Broadway drummer named Joel Rothman, who also, by the way, taught Shmuel Wasserman for a while. So Joe, and just to show you another NCSY connection, Joe Rothman for a while was married to I don't know if you remember the Amzels from Teaneck.
Yeah.
Al Amzel, Joy Amzel, Heidi, Shari, Nachum. Nachum lives in.
Nachum, of course, I know. Yeah.
So Nachum's parents, their older daughter was married to Joe Rothman for a while. So when Mr. Infield wanted to get a drum teacher for Mark, he said, who should I get? And he spoke to Al Amzel, who said, call Joe Rothman. He was married to my daughter. They weren't married by the way. He says, call Joe Rothman. He's the best in the city. So Mark took lessons with Joe Rothman, and he was a veteran musician to our 14-year-old eyes.
He taught him how to read. He must have taught him how to read.
He taught him how to read, and he taught him a lot of good technique. So Mark was already a veteran. What happened was that Jonathan and I met each other in 10th grade, and we were like the junior guys. So I remember this, that the NCSY Jersey region would pay Mark like $50, and they would pay us $35.
And I got started. I was at $75 in New York region, so I would get $75.
Who was the regional director then?
Nate Siegel.
Oh, it was a little later. That was a little later. We got
a little later. And also, I didn't come into NCSY as a kid. I came in as the Shemesh Orchestra with Zalman Umlis as my band leader Avi Feinberg on drums, and I replaced Rabbi Weisberger for a little bit.
Yeah.
It was such a unbelievable, really, if you think about the experience. And then
Right.
I never thought I was going to do this for a living, and I got a degree in accounting, but and I worked as an accountant for 3 years. But
Well, they wouldn't. So they wouldn't let me and Jonathan play spring regional until until the big events, until freshman year of college. So just to give you an idea. So Mark was in the band. He's accepted. He's playing the gigs, and he's doing NTSY in the '70s in New Jersey with Shopsy Parnas, with Suki Berry came once.
right.
Mike Septimus, who's is still wonderful
Mike
guy.
Septimus is a fabulous accordion player.
Mike Septimus, and he's also a brilliant guy, a very interesting, a tiff guy. So Mark was playing in the band with those guys, and they wouldn't let me in. So finally, they allowed that I was going to play in the band. I have to tell you, I had to fight. I had to fight with Baruch Lanner and a number of things. But I had a fight with Baruch Lanner, and I enlisted Rabbi Michael Taubes from who's at Yeshiva University and MTA, who has a shul across street from my house. I enlisted Michael Taubes to help me because Michael thought, Jonathan Rimberg is great. But Baruch was nervous because Jonathan wasn't as experienced. So this is how we got Jonathan. So we got Jonathan to play at a Shabbaton in Englewood, and we didn't let Baruch in the room. We just said, "Can you hear the band? What do you think?" Sounds great. And then we brought him in the room, and it was Jonathan, and he says, "Okay, I guess you guys are right." So that's when Jonathan played his first spring regional with me and Jonathan and Mark. But me and Jonathan and Mark had already been playing the local. See, in Jersey was different than other regions. In Jersey, we had 30 Shabbatonim a year.
Yes, you guys were
training on the local Shabbatons. We did in 11th and 12th grade. By the time we were graduating from high school, we had already done 50 Shabbatons.
Wow.
Right? But
that's unbelievable.
School came along later.
All right. Let's move now let's move on to Shlock Rock for a little bit because we haven't even discussed Shlock Rock. But I want to tell everybody out there, fourcornersproject.org is the sponsor for this program and for all the albums that I release. Because as we all know, you do not buy music. Well, most people don't buy music anymore, and so we need your support to go out to the fourcornersproject.org website. Donate, make a donation for the year, small, big, long, whatever you want to do is fine. We had a very nice donation last week after my father's 20th Yurtzeit show. But this is our 128th show since we started. We did 120 shows in year one. We've got great plans for year two. Plus, I'm working on a bunch of albums. So I would tell everybody to go to the Four Corners Project, make a donation. Yeah.
I want to say when I used to do Nachum Siegel's show, when we do the fundraiser, I would always tell people, donate in honor of me, Jordan Hirsch. If you remember what that's like Al Franken on Saturday Night Live.
Yeah. So
people would do it because they thought it was a gag, which it was, of course.
So let's just do a quick review of your career with Shlock Rock. And you played on Tu B'Shvat, which was the Woodschlock album.
Yes.
And
I played on the Lenny Solomon album also.
Which one?
Oh no, I sang on Yibanei Hamikdash.
So that's Kesher 3.
That's
Kesher 3.
That's Kesher 3.
Yibanei Hamikdash.
Next time I met you after Puerto Rico was at a Shabbaton for Atlantic Seaboard NCSY. We had two bands, and I was in Ruach, and you were the new band Kesher.
Right. So I wanted to talk to you. The Ruach was one of our inspirations when we saw Shmoo and Ira, Oliver Shalom, and Dove with the way they harmonized. Oh my gosh, that was. So
when I started with Ruach playing the Shabbatonim, Harold Fruchter was playing in the band still, and Mayon Chaitovsky would sometimes come. That Shabbaton was Harold, Ira. It was the whole band except for Freistadt. It was a whole band. Meaning Harold, Myron, I think, may have been there, and Steve Schuss was there. So he used to love coming to the Shabbatonim, even though he wasn't really playing so actively because he was busy, being a doctor.
So Ruach starts off as Ruach Revival and somehow breaks into Ruach that somehow breaks into Neshama.
Well, so that's just a business that's just a business change. They
Alan Freistadt was a partner in
what
the
happened was
show.
so yeah. So what happened that I think Nagina owned the Ruach name because Nagina Ruach.
Oh, I didn't know.
So Nagina, I think Ruach became part of the Nagina stable. They'd send out this band, and that was really Shmuel and Ira and Alan Freistadt and the Harold Fruchter and the singers, and they would do their thing with all their tunes from the recordings that I love. And by the way, it was the model for me and Jonathan and Mark too. We used to practice
Right?
all
We
those songs.
love that.
We all, I still do love it. I still, my ambition, by the way, is to get a gig, I don't know, someplace, and do a show called That 70s Band. And
You know
just
what's
do,
very? Can I tell you something funny? Is that I have done shows, house shows here
yeah,
in Israel of 70s and 80s Jewish music.
right, but I have one.
Post Rabbi Sons. So
Right. Well,
post Rabbi Sons
it would
meaning,
be Rabbi Sons and Ruach Revival and Ruach. And here's my rule. Ready for this rule?
yeah,
No Carlbach.
right. There's no
No
Carlebach
Carlbach.
We in it.
We don't need no Carlbach.
But I don't even have Rabbi Sons in it. I have
Okay.
Ruach, then I have Safam, and I have Diaspora. I have
All the
Magama
stuff we did at
Duo,
Chaperones.
right?
Yeah. It'd be
All
great.
the stuff we used to do,
It'd be
and for
great.
me, it's a piece of cake because it's.
I still play with Jonathan a lot. I work for his band nowadays, and I'll sometimes say, "Come on, Jonathan, let's do." And Jonathan's like, I want to do my job. He
I
enjoys
love
it.
doing that old stuff.
He
I
enjoys
love
it
doing
when it
that stuff.
happens, but whereas when I play with Gershon Veroba, we're like, oh, let's do Ata Chonein from Ruach Revival. Let's do this song. And Gershon, knows a million old songs. So everyone has the thing that they like. What can I tell you?
I know.
But
So
we've
okay,
seen
so
that-
1995,
Right.
1995, you played Tu B'Shvat on the Woodschlock album. You also were on Kesher 3. Were you also singing with us on any earlier Shlock Rock albums? Like you might have been on Learning is Good with Shuby and
No.
you weren't on that one?
Nope.
Not a Barbanel. In the middle of Bless On It, Boogie in the Shul, we go
No,
nine
with
nine
the
nine
same-
nine 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 nine
Nope.
nine nine. So that was
I was already doing live shows with you before that. Before 1995. So my involvement with Shlock Rock was more the way I remember it is that if we were doing an NCSY event or if you had a live show where they gave you a budget, you would have
Right.
a horn section. So I
That's
remember
right.
doing that with Dave Bogner and
Right.
Sometimes with Danny. Sometimes we get another sax player. So that's what I remember. And then in later
Right.
years, of course, my Shlock Rock playing was more with. Here's my imitation of Lenny Solomon. Okay, now I hope you don't get.
Oh
offended.
no,
I hope
it's
you don't
your
get offended by
turn.
this. Jordan. Hey Lenny, how you doing? It's great to hear from you. I guess you're in. I'm doing some shows. Listen, I have a show tomorrow, and this is the show in Allentown. I have a show tomorrow in Allentown in a minor league stadium, and I Rinny can't make it, and Innie can't make it, and I called I called Danny Block is back in Israel, and Gary Wallen can't make it. So you'd be perfect for it.
And you did it. First thing is Mike Roth is in and says hello.
Oh, Mike Roth played with Shlock Rock.
That's right. Now,
So
I want to just tell you one thing. This guy, Noah Kaplan. Noah, I'm just saying hello to you. You want to hear some music. Next week is when you hear music. You don't hear music this week. This week is the 9 days.
And how do
now,
you
what
feel
is the
about
9
this?
days? The 9 days between the Rosh Chodesh Av, the new moon of Av, and Tisha B'Av. So
Right.
next week, these 9 days you're not allowed to have live music,
And
even though this is not really live. In other words,
Right.
you could get away with playing piano, but
And I remember when we were young musicians, we asked Rabbi Wasserman, Shmuel's father, a shaila about that. We asked him a question.
what did he say?
He said, you guys can go hear music. You guys are, if you're going to hear music and you're learning and you're studying and it's all part of you can go hear music because that's part of it's your job. But for other people, no. But he says, for us, we could go because we were going to hear music that was going to, we were going to go study. But I will say something. I have some feelings about this. And, I don't know how you feel about it. There are a lot of heterim about music, a cappella, do this. And
Right.
I always feel like, it's a big thing. Rabbi Adler from Rinat Yisrael, where I davened for many years, he always said, there's a difference between Ramosha Feinstein, one great gadol, and the Rav. He said that, the approach is that the things of mourning that we do, let's say in Sphira or in the 3 weeks and 9 days, if this is usher and that's usher. And the Rav always said that it was really about what was the purpose. It was called, what he said was Simcha Bereis, right? The idea of
Right.
celebrating together. So to me, I always felt like if you're having a celebration, doing this to figure out a way to have some kind of music, to me it's like, no, don't have a celebration. It's 9 days.
Right. It's
Acapella,
definitely
acapella's not a heter. Acapella's not a heter.
Michael Roth writes the 3 weeks were
Right.
always for going to the village jazz clubs.
Right. That's what we did. That's correct.
But I never did that. So I didn't
That
look.
wasn't your thing.
No, I wasn't really a jazzer.
Right.
And even to today, I'm more into pop music, and I'm looking for that ultimate. It's very, very funny. You remember Aubrey Sharfman? He was a great piano player, really good piano player. And he lives in L.A. And I visited him when I was out in L.A. And he says he wants to write the perfect song. And I thought to myself, you can't write the perfect song. The perfect song is everybody has got a different idea of what their perfect song is. So. But I didn't want to tell him that, so he's still working on the perfect song.
Yeah,
I'm working on a song. Carlebach had it right. Rabbi Shlomo Carlebach wanted to write a song that everybody would want to sing. That's what he would ask for a bracha, and that worked because we do play his music. Okay, wait. Noah Kaplan writes, last time I heard you live was in 1998 in Yerushalayim. It was a great show. Yes, we do. Listen, that's already 1998 is 23 years ago. And I'm still only 25 years old, so I was two years old at the time.
I told you this, but it's one of my ambitions is that you should come into, and we should find somebody with deep pockets. And I would love to do the Lenny Solomon Shlock Rock Rhythm and Blues review, like the Blues Brothers, have a real horn section, rehearse the band, and just great. All that.
I would love to do that too.
That's my ambition.
So you played with us, you speaking of big shows, we did Queens College a number of times.
Yes, and we did Hackensack, Uri Denurier Auditorium.
Oh, Uri Denurier, that was a great show too.
Sure.
And what about
when I still had hair?
What? I still had hair.
I still had hair. And you know how I know? I put my hair in a ponytail, and Yona Lloyd came and said, I don't think you should really do that.
Really? So if you notice, I'm wearing hockey jerseys. Hockey jerseys makes you look young. Tonight is Carolina Hurricanes night. Carolina Hurricanes. And it's very apropos because apparently it's raining very hard in New York. I don't know if that's true.
Well, I was at the fights the other night and a hockey game broke out.
Okay, so we've already spoken for 37 minutes in a 30-minute show. I just let's talk about two things and then we'll sign off. One is Daniel in Babylon.
Yes,
you play Aryok the Executioner in the original soundtrack of Daniel in Babylon.
I'm still waiting for my residuals.
Oh, me too. I'm also waiting for my residuals. But that was
an amazing project. That was an amazing project. And I remember what you said to me at the time, and I really thought about it. Just the idea that it's all the Sifrei Tanakh, all the books of the Tanakh, the Hebrew, the Bible, right? The Sifrei Tanakh, and Daniel is by far the least studied. I mean, it's less studied than Eov, because you'll get a professor in YU will say we really should concentrate on Eov. They're important, but no one ever says, "Oh, let's learn some really hard Aramaic."
Right.
Let's learn some really obscure Aramaic from pre-Talmud times. It's a hard book and it's hard language, but it's a really important story. And what's really interesting to me is that in the non-Jewish world, that's looked at as like a major book. They draw a lot of spirituals and Christian.
It is so apropos now too. It is so apropos. It's been 9 years since I wrote that first draft, and I want you to know that we will, with God's help, this thing will come out. Yeah. I don't know why it's taking so long because Shlock Rock.
It's an amazing educational project. I really think it's a different level, it's a different class, and the tune writing is great. I think that the idea that you set it's when you write a tune one at a time, you go in with one kind of head. And what I think you really achieved in that project, when you look at a holistic thing, I want to have continuity. I want to have, I want there to be a feeling of unity within the musical. I'm just talking about the music. A feeling of unity within the musical project. I actually think that it elevated your voice and elevated your composer's viewpoint. And in that respect, and came up with some really great stuff. I really enjoyed doing it.
Yeah, it was great, and you were so fat. You know,
even though I was the bad guy.
you play the executioner.
Hey, listen, man, I'm just doing my job. Oh, well, that's a bad thing.
Okay, let's talk about two things. One is the Yiddish Fiddler on the Roof, which basically got world acclaim. This was not.
Thank God.
And I was at a Met game when you guys sang the national anthem.
Well, not us guys, them guys. They didn't
right.
ask me.
The cast was there. I just happened to be at a Met game last summer or two summers ago. I don't remember when. Yeah. So tell us how did that happen, and what was were you the musical director at all, or just no?
No. I have been working with the Folksbiene, the National Yiddish Theater, for about 10, 11 years. You know, it's only when they need a trumpet. What happened was that and this really is a total happenstance how this happened, which was that around 2009, they were putting together a project, fall of 2009. It was after my younger brother, Adam, unfortunately passed away. And I was kind of like despondent. You know, it was a very rough year. Remember I had the kid brother and he passed away. It was a very difficult year because he was young and it was unexpected. And I was kind of just in a bad place. What happened was that the Folksbiene was doing a partnership with a theater out here in New Jersey, University of Montclair State University. They have like a performing arts program there called Peak Performance, and they were doing a partnership with the Folksbiene to put on this show called Schlemiel the First, which was written by a guy named Robert Brustein, who is like one of the major innovators in American theater. He started the Yale Repertory Theater, the Harvard Repertory Theater. He's like a major educator and playwright and theater person in that world. And he wrote a play, a musical using a story from Shalom Aleichem story about the wise men of Chelm. The Schlemiel is the Shalom Aleichem story, and he got Hank Isnetsky from the Klezmer Conservatory Band, who's an amazing teacher and musician himself, to assemble a score, which was essentially klezmer tunes and Yiddish songs with words written to fit the story. So this is the project, right? How do I fit in? So when they put it on, they last put it on like 20 years earlier. They put it on in Boston with the Klezmer Conservatory Band. Now they want to put it on in New Jersey. They haven't done it like 10, 15, 20 years, something like that. They want to put it on in New Jersey. They can't get the whole Klezmer Conservatory Band down. So they got some musicians from the Klezmer Conservatory Band, and they need a trumpet player. So they don't know who to hire. Now, I knew Zalman Mlutzik, the musical director of the Folksbiene, a little bit. Right? So I knew him socially more, although I played with him in the Catskills back in the 80s and 90s when he was playing with Mike Burstein, the wonderful theater performer. So someone says, Margot Leverett, who's the clarinet player, who was the regional clarinet player in the Klezmatics. So Margot Leverett has been hired to play clarinet. Margot's a wonderful klezmer clarinet player, an amazing teacher, an amazing musician. We had, by coincidence, done a gig together during the summer. Margot Leverett says, hey, I just worked with this guy, Jordan Hirsch. He's a good reader. He's a good musician. He knows how to play klezmer trumpet, which you need to do. Why don't you call him? So they called me up. Zalman says, and Zalman's embarrassed a little bit because he doesn't know how to ask. He says, can you come over to the house? He lives in Teaneck. Can you come over to the house and play for me a little bit? So I said, and this is a good lesson, not to be mockbet on your cover. We could be mockbet on our cover and say, oh, you shouldn't be asking me to come audition. But I said, sure. You know what? You don't know me. You don't know my playing. You probably don't remember playing with me years earlier. So I said, sure. I went to the house. I played for him, and he was like 2 seconds later. He was like, okay, fine. It's good. I can see you. You know what you're doing. So because I did that,
that's very funny. Because sometimes people call me up and they want to interview me, but then they say to me, I don't know anything about what you do. Right. And I hold my tongue because what good is it going to do for me to say, okay, so but I hit him full force. I say, let's say I got 39 albums out. I've done over 2,000 shows, and I've played all 50 U.S. states. And I'm working.
Zalman wasn't insulting me.
No, I'm not talking about Zalman. I'm talking about when this happens to me. I said, well, why are you? I think to myself, why are you even calling me if you don't know? How could you not at least look at YouTube before you call me? But so that's what I told him to do.
Right.
Look at YouTube.
Well, that's true. Well, for Zalman, it was more like, look, he was stuck. And he didn't, and he really didn't know who he was going to get because the regular guy that they would have gotten couldn't do it. But he said he liked my playing, and he says, "Oh, you know, you have a nice sound, and you can read, and so that would be great." And because of that, by the way, Zalman and I have become like fast friends. He's like we've become very very good friends from that experience. So because of that, I was on the Folk Spina's radar. They asked me to do one show and then another show. Some shows I could do, some I could only do part of them. And so what ends up happening is we did a show in 2017 called America, the Golden Land, and it was great. It was fun and it was lovely. At the end of it, we did some concerts, and then we found out about Fiddler. So I went to Zalman and I said, "Hey, when are we going to hear about Fiddler? Are we going to be doing it? Are you going to be hiring your regular people?" And he said to me, I really don't know. He was very nervous. It's the biggest thing the Folk Spina ever put on. And it was
the Yiddish Fiddler. Yeah.
Yiddish, right? But it's an enormous undertaking because you're dealing with a very well-known commercial, Broadway piece, which means playing rights and all sorts of legal stuff and dealing with the estate of some of the creators and dealing with the one last living creator. There's a lot of money involved, a lot of business. He really knows what he's doing. In the end, I got the call to do it. So I got the call because I was on the radar. I'm the Folk Spina guy, But that's really why I had never done such a big project before.
So Hashem set you up. Hashem set you up, and because you were mevater, you gave away, you gave in on your honor, on your kavod, right? Well, in other words, you could have said, you want to hear me play? You want me to come over to your house to play? But instead, you went over, you humbled yourself a little bit, you played, and that opened up a door. And ladies and gentlemen,
by the way, it opened up the door not just to the opportunity Fiddler. Here's something more important. It opened up the door for me for friendships, right? For real relationships with amazing people, amazing artists, generous artists who give so much and who welcome me into the family. And you know what? Oh, listen, believe me, I need the gig, and I'm happy to have done Fiddler. But the people ask me, what was it like? I said, the truth is, it was great. We get to do a lot of gigs. There are gigs. But what was really amazing is working with such amazing, generous artists, generous, humble people who were really good at what they do and who were really generous as people. You can be a generous person giving money, but to me, this generosity of the day-to-day relationships that you have with people, it was really amazing to work with those people. So I got the gig, and what happened was that here's one funny thing I'll tell you. So when we got the gig, we were all intimidated. It's a very big project. And it's the most serious thing that the Folk Spina had done in terms of commercial outreach. And although they did an amazing program that I couldn't be a part of because I couldn't make my schedule work, called The Golden Bride, which is another story altogether. So we did the project. We get to the first rehearsal, and we're all nervous. I had been practicing for weeks and weeks and weeks, playing along with the cast album. And I get to the first rehearsal, and the baton comes down, and we start playing. And it just felt so good. When we got to the wedding music, we were playing it really straight. When we got to the wedding music, I thought to myself, well, what can we do to make this different? So I said to myself, let's play it like Jewish music. I know we have to play the notes on the page because that's you're required to, but let's play it like Jewish music. Let's make it sound like a klezmer band. So I started. Now, why was it me and not the clarinet player, who's a great klezmer clarinet player, Zizos Lubavitch? Because I come in first. He doesn't come in until a little bit further down.
Right.
So I come in first, but he hears me and he's like, "Oh, we're having fun? Great." So we went nuts, and we just played the whole thing like a wedding band, and Zalman was so happy with what we did. And what we figured is that Joel Grey, who was the famous director, famous actor who was directing us, I figured if he doesn't like it, he'll say, no, play it straight. And he loved it. So we realized we had something special from the orchestra point of view.
Joel Grey is a superstar.
He's a superstar. I got to see him like every day during rehearsal and a couple times a week. He's an amazing. By the way, he's a big Baal Midos too. He's an amazing Baal Midos. He's
really?
Just, a total mensch, total humility, a loving guy. He is the most amazing person who knows what's important. I want to say that he knows what's important.
It's unbelievable. Okay, listen, we have to bring this interview to a close. I think we've broken all records. 49 minutes.
Well, I didn't even tell you any jokes.
I know. Well, yes, you did. You started off with a joke with mate. I've had every waiter on from the Catskills before you, so we start off with a joke.
Catskills just
I want to tell everybody. Wednesday night we have Brian Gelfand at 10 p.m. Thursday night we have Jonathan Rimberg 10 p.m.
Jonathan Rimberg will tell you the true version of our story.
And ladies and gentlemen, next Monday night we will be doing a post Tisha B'Av regular musical show for everybody next Monday night, which will be show number 131. So today is 128, and we hope you've enjoyed it. Everybody out there, we want to thank Jordan Hirsch, Shlock Rock Hall of Famer. You could read more about him on the Shlock Rock website. There's a nice picture, and also
right?
If you see him on the bandstand, you go up there and you say, "I saw you on Lenny Solomon Live." Keep on shlocking, everybody.
Give to fourcornersproject.org in honor of
better believe it. I agree.
Jordan
Amen. In honor of Jordan.
In honor of Lenny, who does so much for everybody. Thank you, Lenny.
Thank you. All right.
Oh, man.
Keep on shlocking, everybody. See you Wednesday night, 10 p.m. Israel time, 3 p.m.